everybody. Welcome in. If you're joining in now, jump into the chat. Let me know where you're joining in from. I'll keep checking the chat and see what's going on. But we are here today to talk about this new monster. Hey everybody, welcome. Glad to have you. All right, thanks a few of you in there. Yeah, welcome everybody. Jump in the chat. Let me know where you're viewing from, where you're tuning in from, and also if you have any questions. I will answer as many of them as I can. I'm only about a week in with the TR-1000, so that's why I wanted to do this kind of first impressions video about where I'm at so far with this, what I'm liking, what it's lacking, what it's great at, all that kind of stuff. General overall impressions. But I'll answer any specific questions if I know the answer. If I don't, I'll tell you I don't know the answer, because there's going to be quite a few of those for sure. So let's get this modified here. So there we go. Hi. Welcome everybody to another Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on where in the world you are, live stream. Today, it's gonna be a little different. We talk a lot about the gear that I use when I perform and all that stuff. Today we're going to talk about a new piece of gear that I got. Just so everybody knows before we get started, it's not sponsored by Roland. I've never even been in touch with Roland. They've definitely never been in touch with me. I wish, that would be nice. But yeah, I was super intrigued by this instrument and wanted to jump into it and see if it was what it seemed there's only so much you can get out of looking at a spec sheet and seeing what something has. But then you just have to use it and see, what does it sound like? How does it feel? What's the workflow like? Is it inspiring? Is it whatever? So what we're going to talk about today is all that, all those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so, yeah, I can let you know what I'm thinking about it. By no means does this mean this is what you should think about it. It's just what I think about it, and the things that have been my first impressions as far as the way that I would use something. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, TR-1000. What is the TR-1000? So if you've been living under a gear rock, you haven't heard about the TR-1000. What it basically is they took the analog circuits from their 808 and their 909, put those fully analog circuits into this kind of updated versions. They fixed some things so they could broaden some parameters. And so there are some things that sound slightly different and have more capabilities even within the analog engines. Then they added in all of their ACB stuff, all of their ACB being the analog circuit behavior. So it's a digital representation of their analog drums. So there's an analog 909 in here, there's a digital 909 in here, there's 909 samples in here. So if you're a 909 freak, this has all the things. There's an analog 808, there's a digital 808, there's samples of 808. And I guess the first question that I've heard and that I had at the very beginning was, why do you need all those? Why not just do an analog drum machine, or why not just do a digital drum machine? And the answer is, is really, I think, what I've come to realize as I've been messing around with this at the start is options. There are certain times when you really want something to be just that amazing, analog 909 kick. Great, use that. But when you then go into the ACB 909 or the others, then you all of a sudden have all these other things you can do with it and ways that you can modify the sound and shape the sound and do different things that you can't do with the analog engine. So that's a couple of reasons. Then there's the ability to do multiple engines together. These first 4 tracks, which here, I'll go to the overhead view so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. Put my face up in the corner. So on these first 4 tracks here, the reason why they're double wide compared to the others is that each one of these has 2 different voices on it that can be controlled by one fader. You can share parameters, or you can set up your own unique ones for each voice. So there's an A and a B for each one of these first 4 engines. The next ones, which would be like the next 3, is actually the next 6, because those have, there's 2 different faders in each one of those sections, and each one is a different voice, and each one has different sequencer and all of that stuff. So, just on the surface of it, there's 10 channels, but because there's actually 2 in each of these first ones, there's actually 14 tracks that each have their own sequencer. And these these first 4 tracks can either be sequenced together or they can be sequenced independently. So it opens it up that there's basically 14 tracks with 10 faders. So so you have individual control over those. And so when you have all of these different engines, what's really interesting with this machine is that you can layer. So if you've heard me chat about drum machines in the past, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of the electronic analog rhythm. And one of the main reasons that I really love the analog rhythm is the fact that you can layer a sample and a synth on a channel, design a really cool drum sound using a drum synth, analog engines with samples. Design these really cool sounds, and then you can resample them and use those as samples. Then you can layer on a synth again and resample and do that all the way down the road. So what's interesting with the TR-1000 is that you can also layer, just like I mentioned on these first 4 tracks, you can layer, but not only a synth and a sample, like what you can do on the analog rhythm, you can layer anything. So you can layer 2 different analog engines on one track if you want to. So for example, this kick drum that you were hearing a minute ago, this kick drum, crazy, super powerful kick drum, is actually a 909 and an 808. And what you can do is you can set it up so that you have 2 different layers. The 909 shorten up the decay so you get just that great killer punch that 909 has, and then you can put in the 808 so that you get the big boominess of that, and you can add envelope at the beginning so that it gets out of the way of the transient of the 909. So then they kind of fit together and make something really cool, and then you've got controls for shaping those, and then you can route those through other effects. So interesting to be able to have 2 different analog engines on the same thing so that you can sequence them together, you can sound design them together, and then you can save them as a sound in here. So it's like, in the presets. So then when you load it up, it loads up those 2 analog voices on that track. And so you can use those in future drum machines. So it's interesting in that it's very much like the rhythm, but then it kind of takes it another step further, where the rhythm, you can layer a sample and a synth. This, you can also layer a sample and a synth, or 2 different synths, or 2 different samples, or whatever you want on these tracks. So very interesting that way, and has been a ton of fun messing around with different sounds, which is kind of what I've been doing a lot with in this first week, is kind of messing around with what this can do. So so that's one of the biggest things when you look at what it has, what it is. You have all these different engines for all these different drums, which is obviously very cool. Then the other thing that it has, which is really cool, that you can put on any of these channels as well, is sample engines. And it's basically like a stripped out SP404 in this. So they've got sample engines in here where you can slice, you can sequence slices, you can mangle things around. You've got time stretching and pitch shifting. A sample that's a single hit. This one is playing a loop sample, which I can. Right, and you can affect, or you can pitch shift, or things like that, or time stretch. And then you've got kind of traditional toms here. So what I've been really having a lot of fun with is you can mix and match in different ways, and it's interesting because it's one of the hardest things to do with this so far is not like a really difficult thing to do with the machine, but the hard thing to do is to figure out how you want to set it up and how you want to use it. It's very much like the TR-8S, that you can assign knobs and buttons for all different types of functions, so you can use it for kind of whatever you want to control within the machine. And so that's very cool, but because of that, it can get really confusing really fast, right? If you set up one drum kit that has a whole bunch of parameters set up a certain way, then you set up another drum kit that has a bunch of parameters set up a different way, and you use those two in a performance. When you switch from one to the other, you have to remember where you put everything, right? Where everything is within the parameters. So what I've been working on a lot, I have a whole bunch of like random diagrams and drawings. What I've been working on a lot is how I'm going to set this up in order to be able to perform with it. So what that means is, if you've watched my videos before, you've seen with a lot of machines, like for example with the Digitact, I would like to have certain drums always on certain tracks. So like 1 is always a kick, 2 is always a clap or a snare, 3 and 4 are always toms, 5 is always closed hat, et cetera, et cetera. So because of that, I can switch from one pattern or one project to another, or one pattern to another, and I don't have to think too much about what's on each channel. I know that if I bring up the volume, or if I unmute channel 5, it's going to be a closed hat. And so because you could set this up anywhere, like you could put all kicks across here, you could put, you know, an analog hat here and a you know, on the first track, and then your, you know, an ACB kick drum on another track. So you can put anything you want anywhere. And because of that, you could create something that's kind of a beast to handle live, but it does give you a lot of flexibility to set it up exactly the way you want. So, you know, obviously there's drum kind of your standard, you know, positions for these. So, you know, you've got your kick and your snare, whatever they're labeled here, but you don't need to use those, just like you don't on a lot of different drum machines. So being able to set up your own workflow is something that I'm a huge fan of. I think that workflow is probably one of the most important things for any piece of gear. And when you're forced to subscribe to a really rigid workflow that's different from other workflows you have, it can make that instrument either less fun or more confusing or whatever, unless it's a really outstanding workflow. And then it's like, okay, great, then I'm going to switch over to this and I'm going to use that in my other machines. But just to be able to keep things coordinated, I think it's nice that you can build your own workflow however you want. And I think because of that, unlike with the older Roland drum machines, I think that everybody's going to use it a little different. And I think that's something that's probably going to make it even more popular than it would have been otherwise. Because, you know, had this just been a great analog drum machine, well, then it would have just always been used as a great analog drum machine. And this you can use with samples and vocals and melodies and chopping samples and editing, and there's effects and there's analog effects and there's all kinds of things. You can change the routing through the effects, how you want it to go from one place to another. You've got individual outputs on the back, so you can change the routing of how it leaves the machine before it gets to a mixer or whatever. So tons and tons of flexibility, which I think is probably the biggest strength, other than the sound, the biggest strength that it has. So let's jump into the chat really quick. If you have any questions about this, please jump in and let me know. Let's see. see here. Love my TR-1000. Cool, me too. Hey, from Oslo. James, what's going on? Hello from Malta. I love Malta. This is this first place I ever did a scuba dive to a shipwreck. It was in Malta. It was very cool. Speaking of Monster, is it making it into the live setup? We'll talk about that in a minute, actually. But maybe. Let's see, using the 1000 sequencer or the Oxy. So everything that you've heard right there is all the 1000 sequencer. And if you followed along with my live rig for a while, you'll know that when I didn't have drums in the modular case, I was sequencing all my drums within the Electron boxes that I was using for those. I prefer that, but when I moved all the drums into the case, I moved all the sequencing to the Oxy. But that's not necessarily where the Oxy shines, is in drum sequencing. I mean, it's fine. There's nothing bad about it, but it's not that it's any better than something else. And with the Electron machines, I like to sequence in those with drums because you can do a lot of things within the drum itself with parameter locking and stuff that makes that sequencer better for drums for me. And I'm feeling the same with the TR-1000. I love the classic style sequencer, and there's different ways that you can get it to act, but I love being able to program things like ghost notes and accents and all of that stuff right in the machine, which you can also do with the Oxy, but it's just a little bit less intuitive and less easy. You have to have it set up to control velocity or pitch or velocity if you're doing it in the modular. So it's just a little bit different. And so I always prefer sequencing drums inside the drum machine, or for the most part, unless the sequencer's not very good, which this one is very good. So yes, greetings from Berlin. Hello, hello. Hey, from Switzerland. Nice. Sweden, awesome. Curious to hear first impressions on the analog sounds versus your other machine. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, the analog sounds sound fantastic. It's kind of crazy. It's rare. This happened to me recently with the Bohm kick drum, and it happened to me when I also got the battering ram in the Archer's rig. That when you turn something on, it instantly sounds good, and anything you do to it as far as changing parameters, it still sounds good. And I feel like very much that same way with the TR-1000. As soon as I turned it on, it sounded great. And every sound you pull up, whether it's analog, whether it's one of the digital sounds, the ACB, or even the samples, they all sound really good. It's a great sounding machine. And if you know me, I'm not one of those like, oh, it has to be analog or analog is better than digital. The digital engines in this are amazing and they sound awesome. I did watch, when this first came out, I watched the Lupop video on this, and one of the things he said at the end, there was a wish of his, was that Roland would come out with a downscaled version of this that's less expensive and that doesn't include the analog engines, and maybe is slightly smaller or thinner because it doesn't have the analog engines in it. And now that I've used it, I totally agree with that, because if you want the analog engines, amazing, and they sound awesome. But for a lot of people, they don't necessarily need that because the digital ones really sound great. And so this workflow in, kind of like they did with like the 606, where it was kind of the downscaled version. This could be, this could get a second version of this that could cost half as much and could not have the analog engines, and you wouldn't really feel like you were sacrificing a lot. And in that case, the next comparison was, then why wouldn't you just get a TR-8S? And for the sounds, 100%. TR-8S sounds great. This sounds great. The biggest difference between this and the TR-8S is the workflow. And if you've seen this channel ever, you've heard me talk about the Roland workflow that I don't get along with, because it's such this clunky, deep menu divey thing. And what they did with the TR-1000, which goes along with my favorite book, which is Steal Like an Artist. You kind of get inspired by the best ideas out there to create your thing. And they did a little Steal Like an Artist action with Electron. And when you see the way the screen and the knobs work, Electron makes a lot of sense because you've got 8 parameters and right next to it you have 8 knobs and they always line up. Well, here you have 6 parameters and right below it you have 6 knobs and they always line up. And anytime you're changing channels over here, it's changing what's going on there. If you want to change from the sound generator menu to the filter menu to the amp menu to the effects menu, you do with a single button press down here, which again, very much like the Electron workflow, where you have dedicated buttons underneath which take you to a section. And it's kind of the same with this one. So the workflow I've found is much, much quicker to get into with this than it is with, say, a TR-800 or an MC707 or any of the more recent Roland devices. So they've eliminated that handicap that Roland always had for me, which was the workflow. They've kept the great sounds. They've even upgraded the sounds a lot. They sound amazing. And then let's see. Well, I think we're live. There we go. I think we're back. Sorry, internet issues for some reason. Maybe it's the solar flares causing internet strangeness, but there we go. I guess we're connected again. Sorry about this. If this ends up messing up like this, I will have to make some changes here and we'll get back in. But anyway, but yeah, it sounds great and the workflow is mostly adjusted, which is in my mind a big, huge plus. Let's see. Excited for the stream. How do you decide between big boxes like this and investing in more modular? I mean, honestly, for me, it really comes down to sound preference and workflow preference, kind of with everything. I switched a bunch of drums into my modular case because I really love the sound of these drums. And I also love the modular workflow, kind of the convenience of that. This, I've really been enjoying the sound and the workflow of it. So we'll see what ends up happening, but it really comes down to those two things, sound and workflow. And then the final decider is, can I travel with it? Which is something we'll discuss in a little bit with this one, because it is a ginormous machine. I'd like to know your opinion on TR-1000 versus Analog Rhythm MK2. Well, I mean, as I mentioned a little bit before, there are some similarities in that you can layer sounds in both, which I think is a huge plus for both of them. This does it better, and the sound engines are better, particularly, like I mean, it's really hard to beat an analog 909 kick drum like this. There's a reason why it's been kind of the classic for years, but to be able to then take it and manipulate it like you can in here is great. Now with the option for that in the rhythm was to do a 909 sample, then add an analog drum engine with it to be able to modify it. So here you can do it with a bit more control, but yeah, the other thing is this obviously doesn't have the pads, which for me was never a big deal. I'm not a finger drummer, so it was not a big thing for me. Love this sequencer. The Electron sequencer is better for parameter locking. This you can lock movements and positions still, but it's a little bit more limited than the Electron one. You do have some probabilities and things like that, but also a little bit more limited than the Electron one. So if you're looking for the deepest sequencer, the Analog Rhythms or the Digitact or any of those are going to be probably better for you. If you're looking for somebody there's something that has the best sound out there, I haven't heard anything ever that sounds as good as this. So it's sound-wise phenomenal. Workflow significantly better than Roland used to be, and the sequencer's fun. It's great to play with, and but it's still not as good as the Electron one. So I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of personal preference that goes into the decision about which you would be interested in. But I don't think you could really go wrong with either of those. They're both outstanding drum machines. I would say that if I had both of them sitting here and I had the choice of keeping one or the other, I think for right now it would probably be this one, only because partly because it's new and I'm kind of just getting to know it. So I'm trying to see where those limitations are. But sound-wise, the TR-1000 I think is kind of next level sound wise compared with the rhythm. Let's see, is it worth the serious bucks? Can you polish and master? I mean, the two different questions. The first, the polish and master. No, I mean, there's not any hardware box that you can polish and master with, at least not properly, like fully. You can make it probably sound fine to play out most hardware boxes, but unless you're, I mean, even something like a Push 3, even though that's Ableton, you still can't polish that and master it because you can't arrange, you can't do all of that stuff. You can't build a whole track and build automation into it. MPC you can, but the sound's not quite there, and you're still using portable plugins that can go into a portable device. I mean, so I would say if you're going to polish and master, the best place to do that is still inside a DAW or inside a huge music studio where you can use all hardware to do it. But as much as you can do that out of a single box, this sounds phenomenal. But I would say this isn't, nor is there, and in my opinion, nor should there be one box that does everything. I mean, there is a box that does everything. It's called a computer, does everything. But as far as hardware boxes, it's just, for my mind, it's not a thing to have one box that does all. So I don't look for that. With this, the sound quality is really good. It does have some master effects, like a master analog filter. It's got a master overdrive, which is really cool. So you can kind of saturate up by driving your master, which just makes it sound that much more finished and polished. But one of the beautiful things with Roland sounds in general, like since the 808, 909 days, is that they sound amazing, kind of unprocessed, like right out of the box. You put a 909, like a vintage 909, straight into a mixer, into a PA system, and it sounds fantastic. So as far as like polishing and mastering, no. And I would say, I would challenge that there's not anything that does that correctly, at least. So, and then is it worth serious bucks? That's the other thing. And I've actually been asked that a lot, so I'm glad you popped that in there right away. So is it worth the money? The answer to that is always qualified. It depends. If it suits you, it suits the purpose that you have, and if you have the money for it, then yes. I mean, it's not a ripoff, right? But it is expensive. So it's not, it's not a bargain. It's not a cheap thing, but it's also not a ripoff. So, that said, if you want an analog 909 and you get a vintage one, you're going to pay, 3 times what this costs, or at least twice, if not 3 times what this costs. And that just gets you a 909. Then if you want an 808, it's the same. Then if you want all of the boutique drum versions, you can. And, the answer is always, oh, but you can get the Behringer versions. Sure, if you want. If that's what you're into, great. But in my mind, then you still have just one machine, where this kind of is an all-in-one machine. Even at Behringer prices, you would have to buy a whole bunch of boxes in order to do what this does. And I think you would probably end up spending a lot more than what you would spend on this, even at the price of their machines. So I was talking with some people the other day, and when you talk about the price of something, if somebody tells you you can buy a brand new Ferrari for $50,000, that is a massive bargain. But if you don't have $50,000, it's not a deal. It's not anything you can afford. And if what you really need is something to tow a boat, then it's not a good deal, because that's not what you need. If you had a truck that you could get for the same price, one is a better bargain. But if the truck is what you actually need, then that's what you should get. So, is it worth it as far as, value for money? I think so. I mean, I think it's got an awful lot of things that it's capable of doing. And if you start to price that out with other machines, you quickly get to a much higher price point than what this is, right? Individual outs, 2 full analog drum machines, all of the ACB drum machines, sampled, chopping, playback, editing, sampling into it, time stretching, multiple outputs, an app that you can use to edit things with it. It has a built-in audio interface. So like there's a lot of stuff packed in there that if you piecemealed it out, it would be more expensive than this. So in that case, yeah, it's a good deal, but it's a really expensive thing. So if it's not what you need, then it's not a good deal. So, and that goes back to the idea of why I think it would be a good idea to have a scaled down version of this, because not everybody needs or cares about the analog engines. So, something that would fall between a TR-8S and this, where you could actually have the workflow of this and the sample workflow here, all of these newly updated engines in something that was less expensive because it didn't have all the analog stuff in it. I mean, I think that would be a great thing. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up going that way. So, did you sell the Tonewerk? Yes, I actually did. And we can talk a little bit more about that later as well. But I'm going to be moving, so I'm selling anything that I'm not using all the time. That was my last stream. So if you didn't see that, that was the subject there. You can have it sounding real nice out of the box, but you need to turn to other boxes software for polish mastering. Yeah, I mean, I think any machine, you have to do that. So yes, this, I will tell you, sounds way better as a starting point out of the box than any other drum machine that I've ever had. So I think that's one big, huge step forward for this one. But it's not finished, polished, mastered tracks coming out of this, for sure. TMW, what's up, Wabbit? Bonsoir de Aix-en-Provence. Let's see, big question is the 1000 going to earn as much respect as the 808 or 909, or is it just a fad? So here's a couple things, and I've thought a lot about this too. I saw somebody post something like, is it an instant classic? And in that sense, I will say yes, it's an instant classic. You're going to see this everywhere. When I was at ADE a few weeks ago, I already saw it everywhere. It's an amazing machine that a lot of people are already using, even with the flaws that it still has. So in that case, yes, it's an instant classic. You will see it everywhere. Now, as far as respect, I mean, honestly, I would give this more respect than those because it does way more and it sounds way better. I mean, you can do a lot of really cool things. What's interesting with 808s, with 909s, I used to have an SH101, like those classic old Roland devices from the 80s, this will never be the first of those things. It can be an upgrade from those things, but it won't ever take away the fact that they were the first. And so, as far as respect, well, if the respect comes from the sound, 100%, this already has that and more. I mean, it already sounds as good or better than any of those old ones. Now, as far as respect, because it's, a classic or it's rare or it's whatever, they're going to make way more of these than they ever made of those, because a lot of those machines were kind of a flop when they came out. The 303 was a huge flop, and that's why, Pierre and those guys found them in pawn shops for no money and started using them to make acid. So it's like there's a difference between respect as far as sound and then this kind of idol worship esteem of this rare vintage machine that they only made a few of. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you mean by respect. But yes, I think absolutely, as far as the sound or whatever, I don't think that there's anything, you asked if it was a fad. I think that, a fad can be attached to a certain maybe technology or workflow or something like that, maybe. But the reality is this has a 909 in it and it has an 808 in it. It has those same circuits. So it has all of those things plus. So that's why I don't think it would ever be, in my mind, any less than the others. You know, I mean, if I had the money right now to choose between this and a vintage 909, I would still get this because it does all of that and more. And I don't need to have, you know, if I wanted a collector's item and I wanted to have something, you know, like my 101, where it's fun to play, you feel the nostalgia, you feel all that stuff, yeah, that's great. But this one, I just don't see it being thought of any less. I don't, at least so far. All right. Definitely not a fad, I agree. Also, thoughts on this versus something that's more immediate, like hex drums. Obviously two extremely different beasts, but how do you think about the complexity when acquiring new instruments? So for me, there's this balance. When you talk about complexity, complex generally means more involved workflow. So when something does more things, there are more things to do, right? So that generally goes to menus and all of that stuff. So something like the hex drum, very immediate. That's like having a modular drum machine in your case, because that's really what it is. It's the Erica Sense and hex inverter drum modules put into one box with one sequencer. It is, I would say that the hex drum for me is more along the lines of a 909, in that it's immediate, it's knob per function, everything's right on the surface. And what it does well, but what it does is one thing, right? You have one set of drums, just like you did in the 909, just like you did in the 808, right? I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. You can be a classic with those things. And that makes it very immediate. Now, with this one, I haven't found any of those kind of drawbacks of immediacy, because I'm starting to approach this in the similar way that I would approach something like the Octatrack, where you put in a whole bunch of time to set it up the way you want it to play. And that's when you spend your time in the menus and spend your time doing that stuff, so that when you play it out, it's very immediate. Same goes for some of the modules I have in my case, like the Noisite Warp is very much like that. It takes a long time and a lot of menu diving in order to sound design everything the way you like. But then once it is and you go out to play, you've got macros and you just use those to perform. So you never have to go into menus live on stage. And I think with this, I feel very much the same way. So you're going to set it up in a certain way and then you're going to play it, which was kind of the way it was with the TR-800. Where I would say there's a big difference between that and this one is that the TR-800 didn't also have this in-depth screen and kind of workflow that this has over here. So that allows you to, you know, with the TR-800, you had the little screen and it was like one or two knobs to kind of input information, which made the menus really deep for the things that it could do. With this, if I switch to, you know, if I go to something that's layered like my kick, I can just go bass drum layer B and I've got the screen and it shows me what I'm doing. And I can go in and I can modify things live on the fly, which is much easier than it was with the TR-800. It's much more Electron style of being able to just select a track and then you've got everything you need right there, easy to access. So with the TR-800 was the whole kind of set it up and play it thing, just like this has. Where this I think has an advantage is that you can also very easily go in and then modify things while you're playing live, which is important to me, to be able to sound design live and change things, not just, you know, effects parameters or things that you've set up with the control knobs. So yeah, so with the hex drum, everything's right there in front, but what you see is what you get. There's nothing more than that. This is, you know, as far as depth and capabilities, this is like having, you know, 5 hex drums plus, you know, an Octatrack all in one thing. So it just does a lot of different stuff. And that may or may not be for you. What you really want may be super immediate 909 style drum machine. Hex drum's cool. But as far as like the having flexibility of sound design, flexibility of types of engines, and combined with immediacy and a workflow that seems to work pretty well, I'm feeling this, at least me personally. So I would say it's worth checking out. Can the TR go in a backpack? If it's a big backpack, I will. You know, that's one thing I wanted to talk about here. And I have this little this little tape measure that I have in my studio for doing all sorts of different things. And I wanted to kind of show you comparison-wise what this looks like. So if I switch back over to here, so just to compare it to a modular case, for those of you that are in modular, this is an 84 HP 7U case. So, you know, standard I would say would be 104, would be even larger than this. I have the smaller width version so that I can take it as a carry-on. So this is 17.5 inches wide, or 45 centimeters. And our TR-8 is 47.5 centimeters. So basically an inch wider than an 84 HP case. This one is 12 inches or 30.5 centimeters. And this one is 11.75 inches or 30 centimeters. So it's about 1 centimeter shorter depth-wise and about 2.5 wider. And then depth, it's like, is it 5 inches, I think? Yeah, 5 inches. So like 10.5, or no, like 12.5 centimeters deep on the deepest side, and then much less on the front. So it's basically similar size to half of my modular case, which again, when you start to look at comparisons, and we'll talk a little bit about, am I going to use this live? I haven't decided yet, because there's a lot of things in my case that are drums that I really love and that I enjoy playing live and using live, and I don't really need it live. Now, where I will consider that is if I can do one of two things. Either if I get to the point where drum-wise, I don't feel like I need any of the drums that are in here, so I can pull those out and I can put in other effects, modulation, voices, whatever, that would make that side of things more valuable to go along with the drum machine. Or what I have been looking into is scaling back to only one boat, only one side of the case, rather than taking both. And that gives me, you know, if I can scale down, which in order to have a mixer, I can't just bring just the top section, which is my voices, because I would need to get a mixer in here. And so what would I take out and what would I be sacrificing? So I'm kind of going back and forth about how I'll use this. But I will say, despite the size and despite the doubling up of things that I already have, my efforts are focused on how can I make it work to play live, because I really love it. I really love the workflow and the sound. So I want to take it live. Now I just have to figure out how. As far as transporting it though, I did find one thing. I have the Erica Synths messenger bag that was for my Percons when I had it, and this actually fits perfectly in that. And that is under seat personal item maximum dimensions. So I could still take my modular in a rolling carry-on, and I could take the TR-1000 as a personal item in that sling bag. So there is a way to do it, but I haven't decided yet. We'll see. I would definitely, if I was playing a gig locally and I didn't have to fly, I would 100% take it with me and play live. But we'll see as far as travel and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, where are we at? Let's see. Hello from Sweden. Hello, hello. Bigger than 19-inch rack mount, but yeah, a bigger backpack. Let's see what's up, Doming. How's it going? Ooh, we just did a big skip here, so I just missed everything. Where are we at? Oh, there we go. Deep Machine, 100%. What's up from Milwaukee? What's going on, Peter? My only wish is if they come out in black. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Let's talk to our friend over at Synth Skins and get them to do a black skin for this. That'd be cool. Although I have to say, I'm all about the black aesthetic. This gray is, I really like it because it's matte, and it actually does look pretty cool. So it's just me. I would prefer black too, but that's, again. Let's see. Sounds like the TR-8S though, right, without analog. Not really. I have to tell you, so it's, and I was watching some of the information from Roland. They actually kind of took all of those ACB engines that they had and they've upgraded them all. They've kind of expanded parameters. They've refined them. So it's a pretty big engine upgrade even without the analog. And then the sample editing is an upgrade as well. And the biggest change from the TR-8, you know, not talking about the sounds, is the workflow, 100%. It's a really, they definitely upgraded the workflow significantly. But yeah, I mean, for the price difference between a TR-1000 and a TR-8S, the TR-8S is a way better deal because you're getting a lot for significantly less money. Now, for me, I had a TR-8S and got rid of it pretty fast because I didn't get along with the workflow. So for me, that's always been the dilemma for me with Roland. They've always had the best sounding instruments that had this, as my friend calls it, hostile workflow. So it always felt like they were working against you. Like you just couldn't get into a flow and be smooth. This thing, a week in, I'm flying around it. It's way faster because it's much more intuitive in the way that Electron is, where you can just go to a page, you've got parameters and you can see right there. You don't have to know a button combination followed by a shift, whatever. There is a shift button, but it's only to do second inputs of things that are on the surface, and they're just written right under it. So you've got like, you know, shift and kit is kit edit. So it's like, it's very, again, intuitive. And it's not like shift this in order to be able to make a function change or a parameter change. It's just to get you to where you want to go really fast. So it is a really quick to pick up and quick to kind of fly around workflow. So that's for me what makes the most different from the TR-8S. But sound engine wise, they definitely upgraded all the sound engines. You can hear it. I mean, it's the TR-8S sounds good, but to my ear, it always sounded thin. And this thing sounds massive, even on the ACB engines. It's not even the analog side of it. So yeah, it's definitely a sound upgrade. 1000 sounds better out of the box versus TR-8S, I agree. Needs analog heat, yes. TR-1000 known to interfere with the internet connection. Yeah, maybe that's what it was, who knows. Where are we at? Sound does feel unparalleled. Yeah, it's, I just can't say anything else about it. Tonework sounds better. Okay, I disagree, but it's okay. All right, M8 baby, yeah, EasyBot. What's up, Matt? He's all about the M8. Yeah, I've tried twice, man. Just couldn't do it. TR-8S is a great machine. Sounds great. TR-1000 is very nice. Yeah, I agree. They're both good. Roland, believe everyone loved the TR-8S. They are wrong. To my ears, it was one of the so-so drum machines. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like, it sounded good. Like, the Roland sound engines are fantastic. Like, all the boutiques, and they really do sound good. But for me, I couldn't get over the workflow, the older Roland workflow, the kind of traditional Roland workflow. The Roland machines were great when they were not per function. You know, 303, SH101, 909, 808, those were great. And the workflow was fine because you could see everything. Then they got into the computer world and they went to these tiny little screens with only a couple of input knobs. So it's like menu, 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 change a parameter, back out, go to another menu rabbit hole, change another one parameter, back out. So it's really a challenge. With this, you can go easily to an area, change the parameters very fast, and you don't spend all this time trying to figure out where you are in the rabbit hole of workflow. So that was a big, huge plus. But yeah, this, you know, as far, again, to my ears, the TR-8S always sounded a bit thin, and this does not have that at all. Even if you were only using the ACB engines, it does not sound thin at all. So, I expected just a 909 or 808 from Roland, not this all-in-one. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised too. I had heard rumors in the industry rumor mills that this was coming out a few months before it came out, but from what I heard, it was like, oh, it's going to be a new analog drum machine. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be like a 909 Mark II or whatever. And I did not expect this, honestly. And when I heard that, and I kind of had a vibe of what it was going to cost, I was like, well, for an analog drum machine, like, who needs it, right, at that price? But then when it's like analog plus all the ACB, plus the PCM, plus samples, plus all the sample editing and time stretching and all that kind of stuff, it just became a whole other machine. It's a fully featured machine rather than something that's kind of the one trick pony, which in that case, just in my mind, wouldn't have been worth the money. Okay. One of my frustrations with the TR-8 is they set gain too low on many kits. Personally, over time, I became unimpressed with its sounds. Yeah, that was the thing. It's like it was always fine. It always had this great immediate playability live once you set everything up, which this also has. But it had that kind of thin sound and all of that, which this does not have. So that's for me why it's a pretty substantial upgrade. TR-1000 definitely not a Ferrari. Let's see, does it have a similar software to Overbridge? Not exactly. So you can connect it via, it needs a driver. It's not class compliant audio yet. I hope they do that at some point. But it needs a driver. You can connect it to your computer. It has an audio interface in it. And you can put out all of your, you can basically do multi-track audio over USB. To your computer, which is cool. Not quite Overbridge, but then it also has an app, a computer software app, that if you connect this to your computer, you can see all of the stuff that's going on inside. It makes it a little bit easier for sample editing, significantly easier for importing samples into it if you use the app, because you can drag and drop on your computer, where otherwise you need to take it from your computer to an SD, or not an SD, USB stick, pop the USB stick in the back and then load it in. And there's an extra step, and it's not as easy to navigate and find your way around, where when you're doing it on your computer, it's much faster to do it that way. So if you're going to import samples, I would definitely suggest using the app and the software, but it's not Overbridge. It's not, as far as that kind of control goes, that Overbridge has. It's just audio. Let's see. Seriously, TR-8S sound just as good. It's all about sound design. Okay. Awesome that we have options for what we all hear differently. Great time to be alive. I agree. And that kind of goes back to the thing, like, is it worth it? Well, I don't know. What do you need? You know? And it's like, it's amazing that there's gear out there for everybody. There's a workflow with everybody. I never liked the Roland workflow. And so that's why I didn't have Roland machines in my live setup. I love the Electron workflows. That's why I had Electron machines in my setup. Now Roland fixed the workflow, so now I have a Roland machine in my setup. It's not a matter of like being a stand for a company or whatever. It's like, you know, we should all be looking for what's the best fit for us. Like, what do I really love? And you know, what I really love is immediacy and playability and flexibility. So that's one of the reasons why I love modular. But at the same time, this is providing a bunch of things that I love as well. You know, immediacy, flexibility, you know, and great sound and all that stuff. So yeah, but it's different for every person. So I'm not here to say it's good for you or bad for you. I'm saying I'm digging it so far. So anyway, beautiful piece of gear. Yes, it is. Glad I didn't buy the SP1200. See, now there's another thing. Like, I would never say this is better or worse than an SP1200 or an analog rhythm or a 909. Each one's going to be better or worse for certain people. I am not a sample person, so I would have never bought an SP1200 because it's not my thing. But for somebody who is a sample person, they're going to get way more out of that than they're going to get out of this. This has a lot of sample capabilities, but it's nothing like that. So it's like, whatever is best for you, you do you and have a great time. This is, where do we go? This is certainly the Roland drum machine we've been waiting for, though in Australia it's $1,000 more than a Rhythm MK2. It's a lot of money to find. Yeah, it's $1,000 more here as well, $1,000 US more than an analog Rhythm MK2 here as well. And yeah, that's a lot, but it is significantly more capable and more powerful than an analog Rhythm MK2. So again, if size is what you want, get an analog Rhythm MK1, probably the best deal out there for a drum machine. Small, does everything the MK2 does with a couple of super minor exceptions, and is amazing still after, you know, a decade and a half. This is something totally different, and it's huge. So if portability is a thing, well, those are going to win out over this. Even the Mark II analog Rhythm is a lot smaller than this. So again, it all comes down to what's right for you. So Jeff is there. I just mentioned synthskins like 2 minutes ago. Perfect. Got that Percons now? Yes, you do. So Jeff, synthskins, somebody was already asking for a black overlay. It does have this nice curved top, so you could do an overlay that goes all the way down the sides and everything. Nice black version. So anyway, I'm all here for it. I'll promote it for you. Let's see here. We'll have a black limited edition. I don't know, Roland seems weird about limited editions. I haven't seen them do like something like that since they did like the red, the blue, and the gray SH-101 years ago. But anyway, cool. Some information about the development of it. That's awesome. I want one. Yes, I get that. Thanks, great live stream. Thank you. How warm does it get? Honestly, not that bad. I mean, you can feel there's like vents in the back. If you stick your hand back there, you can feel a little bit of warm air, but I haven't felt it get hot at all. And I mean, leaving it on for hours. So surprisingly, I think that's one reason why it's so big, is because they have a lot of airspace in there for airflow so that it won't overheat. And if you're like in a hot club, and then you have a machine that's overly hot as well. So honestly, I haven't noticed that at all yet. And I haven't seen anything in any of the forums that's been an issue yet. So who knows? Just audio or MIDI over USB? I'm not sure yet. Honestly, I haven't tried MIDI. I know it does audio. It's coming as soon as I get one. Okay, we'll get one soon, man. People are already asking. Give the people what they want. Hope the Roland makes MV-9000 to continue the MV legacy, one of the most underrated, misunderstood drum machines of all time. Yeah, I would be surprised if they did, only because I agree with you, it's underrated, but I think that's when they're going to look at this thing from a business standpoint, the last thing they want to do is take something that is not super hyped and then redo it. And that was kind of this, was that, you know, there's people been asking for 40 years for a new 909 and a new 808. So all of it is there. So anyway, what else? What's the load time when changing projects? There is a little bit of lag. It doesn't change them up in real time. Same with kits. I noticed, there's been some feedback in the forums about this, and I know that somebody from Roland has already mentioned that they're working on this, that there's a little bit of a lag when you change kits. Which I think needs to be fixed. The big thing that was a problem when this came out, the big negative that people were talking about was MIDI sync, and that it wasn't syncing properly with things. And what it actually had was it had a kind of lagging start. If you were sequencing or if you were sending it clock from something else, the clock, the actual clock itself was correct, but it wasn't starting right on time. So you would get this weird delay, and they just put out an update a couple days ago that fixed it. So now you have a thing that you can dial in. Let's see, I think it's in the project part. Under MIDI, yes, way down here. Is it there? section. Yeah, so it has this thing here, sync delay. So you can do plus or minus, you can adjust the sync delay. So for me, I'm clocking it from the Oxy One via MIDI. And so all I did was I set it up with something that I knew was a clock that worked, which was a kick that was getting a CV clock from the Oxy One. And so then I could just line it up, and it ended up being, I just had to do plus 20. I don't think that's milliseconds, but I could be wrong. And then once I did that, now it lines up perfectly. And so it's one of those things where, kind of like with latency with a DAW, once you get something set up, it generally is going to be close to that. So with this, clocking it from the Oxy, I just went to plus 20, and it was clocking the Oxy One via MIDI. Oxy One doesn't take MIDI clock very well. But it did work. And then I used the CV clock out from the TR-1000 into the Oxy, and with CV clock, it was back. I think we're back. So what I was saying is, clocking wise, you can clock it from other things, and you can clock other things with it. It does work. You have a lot of options. You have CV in and out, you have MIDI in and out, you've got USB, you can connect it to your DAW. So like, there's all kinds of options that it has. There was one that was not working the best, and that's what they fixed with the clock sync amount. So anyway, what's the freezing issue I've seen on Facebook? I don't know. I have not seen the freezing issue. Freezing by sampler or USB app. Don't know. Also want to ask about the sync issue, but forgot to ask. Well, there you go. now you have the answer. Being able to nudge a machine irrespective of the clock is a must. I agree, and that's one of the things I always love with the Octatrack, is that it had a nudge. I was playing a show once with somebody, we were supposed to play back to back, and the MIDI cable wasn't long enough to reach. And so I was clocking everything from my Octatrack. So I just beat matched my live rig to his live rig using the nudge on the Octatrack, and it was super easy. And you could do that with this as well, with this, with the clock sync, the clock delay. So yeah, it's pretty useful thing. Let's see. Last Roland thing, maybe the Stone Throw collab for the SP404 would be cool if they hit up Axis Records or Trezor. Okay. Yeah, so this is, let's see what we have next. Does this, what did I miss here? Does this tie up one of the Oxy One engines, or is the onboard sequencer enough on its own? Yeah, I'm not sequencing anything in the TR-1000 from the Oxy. Oxy is still sequencing everything in my modular case, but the TR-1000 is sequencing itself. So, and it's because the sequencer is really good. I mean, I can just really quick, just to show you a little bit about what it's doing. So when you have two different layers, and then you've got also the ability to add accents. You have a whole accent sequencer, and then you have the ability to add soft notes. So for example, if you take something like, for example, the closed hat. So here, one thing you'll see, I don't know how well you can see, not sure exactly how well you can see the how strong the lights are, but you have certain steps that are accented. And again, that's from the way I just sequenced those in. You can shift and put in softer notes, but then there's also this accent channel. So if you go to here, this decides where you have kind of master accents, and then you can set the level for that. So it's kind of like a groove pool type thing, where you can set up your own amount of groove that you want for the whole thing, and then you can send that to different tracks. So if I turn that accent all the way down and I bring up the closed hat, you're just gonna hear I've got 4 different accented notes, and everything else is kind of the non-accented. But as I turn up the accent track and how much that's impacting this, you'll hear that it goes on top of these accents. So it gives you a different amount of groove, and that you can set on all of your tracks however much you want them to do. So it's kind of cool to be able to have all of this in here. So like the same thing with claps. So I've got a clap pattern here. And you can hear the different accent amounts, and that's coming from this accent track. If I turn that down, I do have a couple of accented steps here, but not nearly as much. And if you bring up the level, it adds a whole another level of kind of groove to what you're doing. So it makes it really, really interesting. So I like that about this sequencer. And I like how quick it is to program stuff in. There's all sorts of other modes here as well. So you've got like different types of play modes. So if you go to the velocity mode and you're on the clap thing, you've got all the different, I'm gonna bring this up here. Here, let me take the sequence off. So there's no sequence on there anymore. So then we can go to that instrument play mode. So you've got all those different velocities. So kind of like some instruments, like the Ableton Move has the like different velocity levels of things that you can put in, something you can do in Ableton as well. But what's cool with this is that you can kind of like play these. I don't know if you saw Kink's demo during ADE, but that's one of the things that he was doing a lot, was he was kind of like playing the drums, playing the different elements by playing, you know, gross amounts of the steps. So you can do that if you choose to, or you can sequence things in. Then there's a slice mode that you can do. You have different snapshots as well. But yeah, if we go back to like kind of the regular instrument mode, then this is kind of like your standard, you know, this is track 1, track 2, track 3. So you've got like your kick drum, snare drum. So each one is its own individual drum. So like if I stop it here and bring these all up, you've got, or maybe not. Yeah, so anyway, different ways to enter stuff in, which is cool, and it makes it very immediate to play as well. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been sequencing inside this instead of from the Oxy, is I didn't feel like I was really gaining something, where like I would sequence melodic stuff in my Electron devices from the Oxy because it can do some melodic sequencing things that the Electron devices can't do. Whereas the drum wise, I always would sequence those inside the Electron boxes. And I'm feeling the same with this as well. Being able to have all of these here is, yeah, it's something, I don't know, it's, I prefer to be able to sequence things like this inside the drum machine itself. So yeah. All right. What other questions do we have here? Like a DJ deck. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. No problem. Happy to answer your questions. Have you talked about dual voices on the first 4 tracks? Yes, that was the first thing we talked about. It's one of the coolest things actually, is that, you know, again, one of my all-time favorite things about the analog rhythm was that you could layer sample and a synth. So you could layer on an individual track and sequence both, and then you could kind of morph between them. Well, I can do the same here as well. So like with the toms, for example, or I can go to a high tom or a low tom, or I can have it be in the middle, right? So having multiple voices, and that's an easy example because it's just 2 toms, but you could have like, you know, a kick and a clap, and you could have the clap double your kick as you morph between them. So like you can put anything that you want layered with anything that you want. And that means layering samples, layering analog engines, layering ACB engines, putting an ACB with an analog, putting an analog with another analog, putting a sample with an analog, a sample with an ACB. You can mix and match all you want, which is super powerful, and it's not something that you can do on the analog rhythm. So that's where it's a big, huge upgrade. So now time to sell the Bohm. I don't think so. And that's my big challenge, is I really love the sound of the drums that I have in here, particularly Bohm, Archer's Rig, and battering ram. And so I don't think I'll get rid of those. And that's why it's like, okay, well, is it worth it to add a bunch of gear if I'm not able to take stuff away? And as of right now, I think yes. And I'm again, like I mentioned, I'm trying to figure out how I can make it happen rather than whether or not I should. I want to. I want to add this in, even though it's large. I love what I'm getting out of it, and the playability and the immediacy. So I want to add this in. Now I'm just trying to figure out how I can make that happen, and what I want this modular case to be for. You know, what do I want to be doing here that I'm not doing here, or what can I double up? Because, you know, one of the great things about the Bohm is that it has its own unique, very cool sound. And it's not the same as the kicks that are in this. Now, I could probably make kicks that were similar to this, but this is very immediate, has a lot of control over it. So I don't think it will be instead of. I think it will be in addition to, would be my my preference. Because again, you know, you've got some great sounds here. You know, right? But then you've also got great sounds here. Right? That aren't the same. And who knows, why not match them up together? I don't know. So yeah, it's not time to sell the Bohm. I'm going to keep that for sure. Now it's just a matter of, will I use it with the TR-1000, or will I just use the modular as the modular? But I'm trying to make it work. So yeah. Anyway, where we at here? Sidechain on TR-1000 is awesome. I agree. It's another thing that you have on the TR-1000 that's really cool is you have compressors by channel, I believe, yes. And then master mix. You have sidechain that you can send things to or not. You can direct it around, which is cool. You have effects that are insert. You have effects that are send, and then you have master effects, and then you have the analog effects, and you can decide on the different routings to all of those different things. So what do you have to go through? What's going through what is totally flexible and up to you, which is great. And that can also be adjusted for what goes out, the outputs on the back. So you've got you've got different outputs that you can send out to different things. So if you wanted to send a signal out and process it and bring it back in, you can. If you want, you can you can send out from your kick track, your kick sequence. You could send out either the audio of your kick, or you can send out a trigger. So if you wanted to have that go into your module and trigger into your modular and trigger something like a sidechain or like an envelope follower or whatever you want to do, you can do that. So you can decide what type of output it is, which is really super cool. Yeah, so being able to have, like I said earlier on, being able to have flexibility to change up the workflow, change up the routing, decide how you're going to use this. Like, for example, right now, I'm going from the TR-8 into the mixer that's in my modular case, right? So it's coming into a channel on my mixer. And so now it goes through master effects and end of chain processing and all that stuff to go out. But one of the things that I realized that I can do with this is I can actually have my whole mix from my modular case go into the external input in the TR-8, get then processed there. So it can go through master analog filter, it can go through master analog overdrive, all that kind of stuff, and then go out, and I can have the main outputs from the TR-1000 going out to the house rather than coming out from my modular. So choices. And what I want to do is I want to be able to mess with it, figure out which of the different options that I like the best, and then build my workflow from there. And so again, it's one of the things I love with devices like this is that you can build your workflow rather than having to stick to the workflow they said. One of the things that I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm going to reserve probably two of the kind of, I don't know, the single voice channels and one of the dual voice channels. I think I'm going to reserve those for samples. So what I was using the 1010 black box for, because I can put longer samples in time stretch, and that way I can have those already internal in here rather than bringing another box. Obviously this is another box, but you're getting different stuff out of this. And again, in that case, this is something where you could actually do very easily a whole live set with just the TR-1000, which is kind of rare in a device like this. Normally it's like, you can do it with a lot of samplers, you can do it with some of the more kind of DAW in the box kind of things. But to be able to do it with synth engines, analog engines, sampling, time stretched sampling, one-shot sampling, a lot of effects and all of that stuff all in one box is pretty cool and not super prevalent out there. So it's interesting to be able to do all that stuff. Anyway, let's see here. What kick was that? Sounded like I need it. That kick was the Ohmforce Bohm. Analog effects, high pass filters, saturation. Yes, that's what I have them set on right now. What do you say? Is TR-1000 sounding better than Analog Rhythm 2? Yes. Is that the Rhythm can sample, but it really is only a one-shot sample player and sampler. And this you can time stretch, which you can't do on the Analog Rhythm. So that's another kind of added plus. So yeah, but sound-wise, 100%. TR-1000 bigger than your modular rack. Yeah, it's about the same size as one side of my modular rack. Very similar size. We measured that a little while ago. Who takes a $3,000 machine on stage? I mean, anybody who's playing hardware on stage probably has way more than that with them when they're playing on stage. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's playing modular on stage is playing with something that's way more than that. So this is another one of those things. But yeah, stuff ain't cheap. I mean, I guess you could do a bunch of Volcas and it would be cheaper. But yeah, no, it's, when you're looking for a certain sound or a certain workflow or a certain play, then yeah. Let's see. You sequencing with the Oxy still? No, none of the drums, but yes, all of the modular is sequenced with the Oxy. I'm gonna get Roland to build a carry-on case. That would be super nice. I would say I would love to see them build a bag that's a personal item size bag, because like I said, the Erica Synths messenger bag fits this perfectly, and that I know I can take as a personal item. And that way I can still put my modular as my rolling carry-on, which would be the plan, I think. But we'll see how tempted I get when I get to that. How tempted I get when I get to the chance of taking this somewhere else. But looks like the King Studio machine. It is a King Studio machine. I mean, if you just wanted something to use in the studio, it's amazing. But I also feel like you miss a big part of the value of it if you're using it as a studio machine, because it's very playable, which is cool because you can, like I like when I'm writing, I like to play things into a DAW in the studio, but And so it's great for that, but it is very playable. I mean, the first night that I turned this on, I put in a sequence and started jamming around, and I was messing with sounds and jamming with stuff, and I was like 2 hours in before I even realized, because it was so fun to play, just to jam on as an instrument, and so immediate and so hands-on to jam on that it made it a ton of fun to play. And I haven't even gotten into the morph fader thing yet. That looks cool. I mean, it's still not at the level of what the Octatrack's doing as far as its fader and being able to do those scenes, because you can't lock to both sides. You can only lock to one, so it's like on or off, rather than fade from A to B like the fader is on the Octatrack. And so, yeah, you can have different things, but you can't fade from one to the other. You can fade from nothing to one of them to nothing, then change it and go to a different one to nothing, then change it and go to a different one. So it doesn't have the same kind of capability that the Octatrack one does. And you also can't parameter lock everything to those scenes like you can on the Octatrack. There's only limited stuff. It's basically only what you can do with knobs here. So there's a lot of functions that you may not have assigned to a knob. So this goes back to that setting up the workflow thing. You have to assign things to knobs that you know you're going to want to morph later. And then you can assign them to the morph function. So it's like, it's a lot of layers of preparation, where, you know, with something like the Octatrack, you don't necessarily have to think too much about it. You can parameter lock anything to any scene, and then you can morph between two scenes rather than 0 to scene or back to 0 again, if that makes sense. No. Let's see here. TR-1000 is final boss. It is pretty good. It does have a few drawbacks, which we'll talk about in a sec. Just watch your OPXY stream. Are you still using it? It's sitting right over there. I'm using it when I'm taking long flights. Is kind of like what I use it for. It's not something that I'm ever going to use in my live setup. I like to jam on it and play as a travel thing. But it is in my list of things that I'm selling right now. So if anybody wants one, it's for sale. Wish the drop had more CV outs. Don't want to rely on MIDI to CV converters. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of things out there that have a lot of CV outs. I mean, the Oxy one has 8 CV and 8 gate, and that's already a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think the way everybody's going to have to use the drop, if they want to use it with modulars, you have to use it with converters, MIDI to CV converters, and there's some really good ones out there. So, you know, might as well. It's not like you're losing something. So, but it does take up space in your case. Fast ideas and jamming, yes, totally. Go with the flow. OPXY, nice for TR-1000. External in. I mean, sure. It's not for me. I mean, the OPXY is not a performance device for me. It's a jamming idea generating fun thing to play that's really portable with the best battery life of any device I've ever used. So it's got those things going for it. But as far as live performance, it's not my thing. The performance effects on it are not anything I would ever use, because I don't use like kind of glitchy stuff when I play. The performance effects I prefer are much more subtle. And so that's why I like it in the modular, and I like the knob per function of a modular. So yeah, but it's also much bigger, obviously, than OPXY. But the OPXY is a great machine for what it is. I mean, for me, it's still the best portable, idea jamming machine out there. So, how does it compare with? Oh, there we go. How does it compare with Electron drum machines? It's different. It's better in some senses than some of them, but it's not as portable. The sequencer is not as good as the Electron sequencers. The sound of the analog engines and the ACB engines, all the synth engine sounds for drums, I feel like are better than the Electron ones. This is more capable with chopping and editing samples than any Electron box except the Octatrack. The Octatrack I think is still better than this as far as sample editing, mangling, that kind of stuff, time stretching. But this does time stretch and edit and mangle and all that kind of stuff. So it does have a lot of good to it. But it's not, I'm not the person that's going to say this is better than this. This is better at these things, and those are better at, the sequencers are better. They're much smaller and more portable. The workflow, I think, is still better, the Electron workflow. This is a huge step forward in workflow for Roland from the really bad workflows of the TR-800 and the MC707. This is a huge step forward. But it's still not as capable as the Electrons. I mean, being able to, with the Electrons, to parameter lock anything in the entire device is a big deal, and that's not something that you can do here. So yeah, I mean, each has pluses and minuses, and this is obviously significantly more expensive than any of the Electron boxes, including the Rhythm. But in order to get what this is doing, and you still wouldn't even really get there, you would need the Rhythm, the Octatrack, and man, I don't even know, like the Syntact or something else that has more engines. But just to have all of the analog engines that this has, plus all of the ACB, plus all of the PCM, plus samples, plus everything, it has kind of all the sounds. So that's, for me, one of the biggest things, big, huge advantage. Hello, GearTube. What's going on? Does the OPXY solve the gripes you had with the OP1 field? Yes. The thing with the OP1 field was that it didn't have good MIDI implementation, and it also didn't have a good way to get ideas out of it other than, playing them out and recording them into something else. The OP1 is great because for me, the OPXY is great for me because it's a sampler-based thing. Not sampler, sequencer. That's what I meant to say. Sequencer-based thing, where for me the tape workflow of the OP1 did not lend itself to, once you generate an idea, exporting that into either a DAW workflow or a live performance workflow or whatever. With the OPXY, because it's a sequencer-based workflow, you can create patterns and sequences and melodies and bass lines and drum patterns and whatever, and then you can connect that via MIDI to other gear, and you can, send those out to your DAW, or you can use those sequences to sequence other drums or other synths or whatever after having sketched them out on the OPXY. So yeah, it did solve the gripes that I had with the OP1 field. It's I did not like the OP1 or the OP1 field at all, and I really liked the OPXY. For me, it was a huge difference to go to that kind of sequencer-based workflow. Electron sequencers are kings. Yes, they are. Do you love the sound of that machine? Yes. How does it compare to the Percon's workflow? That's a good question, because it's actually the thing that I love with the Percon's workflow is that the 4 tracks of the Percons, you always have the 4 sequencers there in front of you. So it's kind of like using a multi-track sequencer, like here in the Oxy. Like if I have multiple tracks, I can see how individual tracks relate to each other when they're next to each other. And that's a big plus with the Percons, is being able to see where things are next to each other so that you can use that to sequence. And with this, you can't do that, obviously, just like you can't with most drum machines. So in that sense, I really love that about the Percons, although it takes up a huge amount of space and it makes the machine even bigger than this one. But that's great. The Percons doesn't have the kind of immediacy playability that this has, as far as like the faders and the effects and the master effects and all that kind of stuff. The analog effects here, the overdrive and the filter sound great, and that's not something that the Percons has. It only has that Bucket Brigade filter, Bucket Brigade delay. And so comparatively to the Percons, I think this is, again, 20 times more functions that this can do than what the Percons can do. Now the Percons is very immediately playable because you've got all of the knobs right in front of you. This you do too, but they will be different things depending on what you assign to them. Where with the Percons, what's in, track 1 has a specific voice. And so those parameters always relate to that voice. Where here in one project, pattern 1 or track 1 could be, an analog 909. And in another track, it could be a sample of a vocal. And those parameters would all do different things depending on what you assign to them. So you gain capability, but when you lose the simplicity, you also lose some of the immediacy. And so again, this goes back to, I think what I'm really working through with this now is to figure out how I'm going to set it up where I can use it the best. So that's why right now I've just been kind of screwing around with it and finding out what I like, what I don't like, what I want to use versus what I don't really need to use. And that's going to help me figure out, priorities, like what do I want to go on different tracks? What do I want the different controls to be? Because there's certain things that I like, for example, in the modular, there's certain, with my, with my hi-hats that I have here in the modular, I love being able to have pitch control over those as well as having decay. That gives me a ton of flexibility over what this sound does. And so wherever I'm gonna have my hats in this, I wanna be able to have control over pitch and decay for sure. But what else do I want? Well, effect sends, which I have here, I can send that same hat to a reverb in here. But I want to be able to take my hats here and also send those to the reverb. So I want to be able to set it up in a way that makes sense for me and makes sense for the way that that I'll be using it. So let's see. Analog Rhythm MK2 and Tonework for polysampling and effects. Sure, if polysampling is important to you. That's one of the reasons why I got rid of the Tonework, is because I'm not a polyphonic instrument guy. And the thing that would have made me probably keep the Tonework is if it could do time stretched sample playback, which it couldn't, and this can. So for me, being able to have a vocal that I can just have playing on a track and then I can fade it in when I want to and just have that vocal loop no matter what tempo I'm at is powerful for me for what I do, whether it's a vocal or an atmosphere or whatever percussion loop, like something like these, like where do we go here? Oh, that was on a different kit. Anyway, just by multi-sampling it into the Tonework, and then you can have polyphonic, version of that in a relatively small live setup. So it's crazy powerful that way. It just, I also think it's really powerful as far as the routing goes, and being able to route through buses, processing things differently and layering effects and stuff is very cool. But for me, those aren't things that are important to me. So that's why I don't have it anymore, is because I used it, I liked it, I saw what it could do and what it couldn't do, and I said, you know what, this is a great machine for some people, but it's not for me. It doesn't fit my workflow that I need. Now, that's kind of the way I'm approaching the TR-1000 too, is I got it in and I said, I want to mess around with it. How does it feel to play? Is the workflow something I get along with? Do I like it? Do I enjoy playing it? Does it sound good? And does it lend itself to the music that I make? And so far, the answer to all those things has been yes, and that's why I'm saying, like, okay, I'm going to figure out how I can fit this into my live setup as far as travel goes, because already sound-wise and workflow-wise, it's there. I already want it in the live show. So, as sampler, is Tonework better than TR-1000? As drum machine, is TR-1000 better? TR-1000 is a way better drum machine than the Tonework. Way better. And as far as the sampler goes, I mean, depends. The Tonework doesn't time stretch and this does. So if time stretching is important, this is a better sampler. This doesn't multi-sample and Tonework does. This isn't polyphonic, this is monophonic. Tone works polyphonic. So if polyphonic and multi-sampling are important to you, then the tone works better. If time stretching is important to you, then this is better. So it's like, what do you need? Like, what are you going to use it for? And then once you figure out what you're going to use it for and what you need, then you can decide what's the better fit for you, for your particular workflow. So I love playing live when writing. Got myself a field. Yes. I love playing live when I'm writing too, for sure. Love with TR-1000. So am I, so far. I do improvised songs on the field, pairing it with an old OP1, monkey sequencer drums, crazy ambience. Yeah, I mean, that's a fun setup to play for sure, if you're a live player. So like, I'm a horrible keyboard player, but I'm really good at playing sequencers, sequencing things in live, changing up patterns live, making new things, writing new stuff live using sequencers. I'm fast with that and I really enjoy it a lot, which is why the OP1 and the OP1 field I didn't get along with, because they don't have good sequencers. And but then the OPXY came out and I was like, oh yeah, this is for me, and it really is. So something for everybody. It's amazing. How about a little demo jam? Sure. Yo, what's going on? Yeah, so that was kind of what I was playing at the beginning of this, was just to show you guys. So right now what I was doing is everything that's kind of drums and groove and all that stuff is in here. Let's go to one like this one. Seems pretty cool. I don't know. I've just been playing around with some of the kits that are here and kind of modifying them. But so using the TR-1000 for everything that's kind of drums percussion wise, and then using the modular for kind of more melodic stuff. So switch to a different kit here. Yeah, this one's good. Yeah, so this was the kick that we were talking about before. So anyway, that's what it sounds like. Sorry, I got lost in that for a second. Hope everybody didn't fall asleep. All right, so let's see. Where do we go? Your style is cool and inspiring. Thanks. I have fun doing it, that's for sure. Let's go, man. Techno machine. It is a techno machine. It's also a house machine. It's also a drum and bass machine. It is also a jungle machine. So it's all those. Let's see, a million things to say about the TR-1000, but number one is that it sounds really, really, really good. 100% agree. That for me that's the top line, is that it sounds fantastic. The second line is that it has so many flexible different ways that you can do stuff with it, is amazing. And then I think the third thing is the workflow is a massive upgrade from any workflow that Roland has ever done. So all of those things for me are those are the headlines about the TR-1000. So yes, I agree with what you were saying. Let's see, I've been looking for a case like yours. It seems like there's no travel ready 12U84 available in the US. I mean, not that's made in the US, but so this is actually a 14U84. They don't make a 12U84 anymore, unfortunately. I'm trying to get them to. I hope they will listen to me and make a 12U84 again, but this is a 14U84. And yeah, as far as in the US, I mean, you can buy these in the US. They just have to get shipped from Italy. You have to pay a stupid tariff on them. But that's the same if you were gonna buy, a case from anywhere else in the world. So this case is made in Germany, case is made in Japan, made in Australia, made all over the place, but you still gotta pay a tariff when they get here, unfortunately. So yes, TR-1000 and Digitone 2 would be a massive combo. I agree. I was actually thinking about that recently, that Digitone 2 would be a massive companion to this, just because it's got, 16 tracks and you can layer voices to do really amazing sound design. So if you weren't in the modular world and you wanted something to have a lot of voices in a small amount of space, having the Digitone 2 would be great. You would still need some sort of a controller to use as a mixer for the Digitone 2. I mean, you can use the mixer that's inside, but it's a little tedious. So you would need a controller like a Drop or one of the new Launch Control XL Mark IIIs. That would work for the Digitone as well, just to be able to have fader control over the different voices. But yeah, that would be a massive, massive, super powerful and really small. This is huge, but much smaller combo than this in a full modular, for sure. Let's see, it looks like a tank. Yes, it is. It is a tank. It is totally huge, 100%. Where are we at? Sick bass, thanks. Do you mind me asking what processing is creating that crunchy eroded effect to the shakers earlier in the demo? Yes, so what that is, we don't need all this atmospheric background noise here. What that was this. A bunch of that is because, well, first of all, it's this voice in here, if I'm not wrong, this one is a sample, and it's pitched down a little bit. So pitching something down is going to erode the sound. So like, if you get up here, it's not as crunchy, but if you pitch it down to where I had it, that erodes the sound a bit. And then I was also using the Master Overdrive, should probably be on this view, using the Master Overdrive, which adds a really nice amount of crunch to everything. If I take off, let's see, I'll take out reverb. Yeah, so that's just the sound by itself. And as I turn up that overdrive, you hear it get like super crunchy, but I only had a little bit on there, like 10%. But a lot of what you were hearing was coming from being pitched down. So it erodes the quality of the sample when you pitch down, so you get those kind of cool crunchy sounds. Right. So yeah, so that was part of what was coming from. Also, this is going through my whole modular case, which is going through as kind of a final processing before it goes out. It is going through the polydactyl Versio from Noise Engineering, which has a saturator on it. So if I turn the saturator up, you hear that crunchiness come in too. So it's kind of getting the dual hit of added harmonics from the overdrive in here and then the saturator in here. So that's giving it some crunch. And when you reduce down the rate of the sample by pitching it down, it's actually not the sample rate, but when you're reducing down the quality of the sample by pitching it down, it degrades the sample a little bit, and then you get a little bit of that crunchiness. So yeah, let's see what's going on. Hey Mike, what's happening? Sounds great. Have you experimented with crossfader yet, and do octatrack scenes? I have not, but I've been reading about it and seeing what it does, and it's not. It's kind of funny. It's not a crossfader the same way the octatrack is. It is a fader, but not a crossfader. And what that means is with this morph fader, you've got, if you can see up here, but it'll say morph 0% or 100%. So you basically can go from nothing to full morph of whatever you've done and back to nothing. Where part of the strength of the octatrack fader is that you can assign an A and a B to either side, and you can assign any of the scenes that you've made to either side. So you can morph between scenes from one to the other. This one you can't morph between two scenes. You can go 0 to 100, back to 0, change scenes, go to 100, back to 0, change scenes, go to 100, back to 0. So it's very different from the octatrack one. It looks the same because it's a gray box and it's a crossfader and whatever, but it's like, it just looks like it on the surface, but it's not at all the same thing as what the octatrack is. And the other thing is with the crossfader and the octatrack, when you're building scenes, you can assign basically any parameter in the machine to any scene. And with this one, you can only assign ones that have been assigned to the knobs. So you've got like super deep amount of functionality that you then have to decide which you're going to assign to knobs so that you can then assign it to the morph fader. And thinking about what would you want to morph from 0 to 100 back to 0, right? So it's like, it's not at all the same thing as the octatrack fader. So it won't do the things that the octatrack fader does. I mean, you could assign, reverb sends to every single thing, and then you morph into different settings of the reverb sends. So then you have kind of a reverb scene, but then you would have to do different things with it. So it doesn't do it all what the octatrack one does. So still very different beast. Is the synth engine inside polyphonic? Well, first of all, there are a lot of synth engines in it, but the quick answer is no. Every channel is monophonic in this. It is designed to be a drum machine and not a synth. So it can do synth stuff, but it's not really set up to be a synth. It's set up to be a drum machine. Now, the sampling, you could have like synth stabs that were a polyphonic stab, but it would still only be a monophonic. You could only still play one at a time, right? You can't play multiple at a time. Now that said, it does have the possibility to have 14 things play at the same time, which like it's a weird thing to think about, like polyphony. There is no polyphony per track, but all of the tracks can play at the same time. So the device itself can play multi-timbrely, but you can't do polyphonic synthesizer work with this, which is why somebody mentioned a little while ago, and I totally agree, this paired with the Digitone 2 would be an absolutely amazing combo, because there you can have polyphony, you can have layered samples, you can have, multi-voice, there's different types of engines, you've got really, really great sound design capability, and you've got 16 tracks to pair up with something like this, where you've got another 14 tracks of drums and percussion. Super powerful, super powerful. So let's see where we at. Hello, what's up, Craig? Good to see you in the chat. Love it, thank you, good. 16 different morphs, yes. 16 different morphs per pattern. But again, this goes back to that same thing where, with the Octatrack, you've got, within one pattern, you have 4 parts. And each part, you have 16 scenes. So you really have the ability to do 64 different scenes per pattern, and in groups of 16, because you can't morph between 2 different parts, but in each part you've got 16, and you could morph from one scene to another scene. With this one, you've got 16 per pattern, and you can't morph between them. You can morph from 0 to scene, or whatever you want to call it, and back to 0. But you can't go from scene 1 to scene 2 like you can in the Octatrack. So that's the big difference. Yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to pop those in here. Again, happy to answer any of those, or show you anything that I know how to do. Again, I'm only a week in, so there's a lot of stuff that I don't know how to do. But one thing that I will show you is, when we were talking about workflow, the workflow on this is fast compared with other Roland devices. So, for example, if you're on a page like this, you have 6 different parameters and you've got 6 knobs that go with those parameters. So if you look, you can say, okay, tune is here, so that means tune is here. And it makes a lot of sense, just like it does in the Electron boxes, which Roland never did this before, which is really, really nice that they're doing this now. And to be able to switch between things. So if you want to be on the sound gen page, just like with the Electron, the buttons that are underneath the screen. Here, let me grab my Digitact here so you can see what I'm talking about, rather than me just talking about it. So, like on the Digitact, if you want to switch to different pages, you've got trigger, source, filter, amp, effects, and mod. And you choose that, and that takes you to a new area, and then you've got parameters. And as you want to go through the different levels of that, you can just keep hitting this, and this will go to different knobs or different pages. Same thing here. Sound generator is basically source, and you've got different pages, and you can just toggle through them by pushing this. So you've got 3 pages, or you've got arrows, and you can go back and forth between the pages. But each one of the pages has 6 parameters that line up with this, which is great. Then you go to filter, and you've got filters. So you've got, okay, this is what this is, okay? And another thing that's interesting too is, if you've got, let's say like in this first row, there's only one parameter. They set it up so that it doesn't matter which knob you use. So you can use the top knob or the bottom knob. And that's kind of smart, because normally it should just be the bottom knob because of the position where it is, but then you'd get frustrated because you grabbed this and it didn't do anything. And so whenever there's just one parameter, it can be either knob. And when there's 2 parameters, it's the 2 that are just like that. So it's handy. Then you go to, to the amp, and it's the same thing. You've got different things that you can do. You can decide on the type of envelope. Do you want it to be an envelope, or do you want it to be a transient shaper? And you can go into different stuff. So it's very fast and very intuitive. Then if you want to get to any of the secondary functions, so like, for example, I don't know, so like on the effects page, so in the effects page, you have effects type, and then you can, you get parameters. So let's say we chose, I don't know, saturator. So if we chose that as the effect, now you've got parameters that work with that, and you've got different pages of it and all that kind of stuff. But if you, this is also for the mixer, and all you have to do is hit shift and this, and then you're in the mixer. So then with the mixer page, you can do all kinds of things like pan and send if you want. You can, this is where you do your effects routing. You decide, because right now we're on this closed hat channel, but as you go through the channels, you stay on the same page. So that's really handy too, as you go through different tracks. So like if on this track, we didn't want this to route to the master, we wanted it to route just to the analog effects and then to the master. Or if you wanted it to go through without touching any of the effects, you can do that as well. And you can really quickly kind of go through and say, I want this to be here, this to be here. You've got track gain, which is also another thing that is really handy when you are setting up to play live. So let's say you're playing along and you decide that like these fader settings, this is what sounds really good with this particular pattern that you have. So then you can actually set the gain and say, I want it to set, it'll say reflect to gain. So if you enter, if I was to hit enter here, it'll then say push all of these to maximum, and this little bit would be maximum fader position at that point. So the maximum would become these levels. So you can preset the levels that you want and then set them all so that they're at maximum, so that way when you're playing live, you don't have to necessarily find the right sound. Like if your monitoring's not good, you just know that all the way up, if you set it up this way, is the mix that you wanted to have with this. So it gives you a really, really cool way to make things easier on yourself when you're performing. So again, there's a lot of stuff that they built into this that's really, really interesting in that way. Another thing too that's really easy and fast in the workflow is, you know, let's say we're on our kick drum track here, which is dual layer. So you've got A and B here. So A is the A engine, whatever you've loaded in, and B is the B engine, whatever you've loaded in. So in this case, B is the 808 bass drum. So then you go in and you have parameters. You have tone, you've got decay, you've got the phase, which you can flip to make things sound good, which is great when you have two kick drums on one channel. You can make the phase work correct. And then you've got a delay send, because that's what we had set. Ice A, you just click A, and if you want B, you click B, and all the parameters change. And then you can go to the second one and you've got A and B, and the third one you've got A and B, and the fourth one you've got A and B. So you can really quickly and easily go in and modify those things, which again, I didn't expect this from Roland, because normally their workflows are not fun at all. And this one has been really fun, which is great. Same thing with kits. So you can go into kits and you can select which kits you want. I've been playing around with a lot of the kits that are built in here. Some of them very, very, very cool. You know, like if you want something that's harder, you've got stuff like. Go through some of these. I like this one actually. I like this kick a lot. With some good percussive stuff. And this is all just overlaying different kits on that exact same pattern that we were listening to before. So if I take this back up to the This is the pattern that we were doing earlier on. So much like the analog rhythm, kits and patterns can either be linked or not linked. So you can have it so that when you change patterns, you have a kit linked to it and the new kit changes with it, or you can set it up so that they're separate, so that you can keep the same kit and change the pattern and then change the kit whenever you want on the pattern. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility for transitioning between things and in playing live sets. Unfortunately, and this is one of the drawbacks, the one workflow thing for me so far that I'm having to try to find a workaround for is changing kits while you're playing live. First, there's a little delay in that, which I know they're working on, so I'm not going to complain too much about that because I know it's about to be fixed. But the other thing is, I wish there was a way to, let's say, hold shift and scroll through and figure out which kit you want. And then when you release shift, it loads the kit. Or to have it just be find the kit you want and then hit enter and then it switches. Right now, it only works in this kind of like I don't know what you would call it, like a mode where you're auto playing, as if you were just going to be auditioning. That's the word I was looking for. So if you were just auditioning kits. So like, for example, if you're playing like this and you wanted to go to something else, as soon as you change it, it'll change to every kit as you're scrolling. Which again is great if you're gonna hit stop, you're gonna find a thing, or if you wanna audition and go, what does this sound like? Okay, I like this one. But when you're playing live, sometimes you wanna go from kit 1 to kit 2 or kit 1 to kit 6 and not have kit 6, or not have kits 2, 3, 4, and 5 play as you're scrolling through them to get to 6. And it doesn't do that yet. I think it's kind of a weird omission in the workflow, and I hope they fix that. Because the way I want to use this, and I already came up with kind of a workaround, which I'll tell you about in a sec, but the way I want to use this is I want to be able to have kits and patterns separate from one another, so I can keep one pattern going that I'm editing and kind of writing and modifying on the fly. And then I can, when I want to play different sections, I can change to a different kit. And I don't want to have the kits be completely different from one another. So I'm going to keep like probably 5 or 6 of the voices exactly the same across all the kits. And I'm going to change up the other ones to give me some different samples or some different options to play with those. So I can still have kind of foundational drums and percussion that are always similar. And then I can have unique individual things that I can pull up for depending on which kit I'm on. And then keep one pattern. So again, trying to find a way to simplify the workflow so it's always the same for me. Like if let's say my kick is always a similar kick, then I have these knobs set up so that I know what I can do to modify that kick and what it does. And I have things set up like, adding transient, adding decay, taking away decay, adding reverb or delay to different things. So I can shape the sound, change the pitch, the tuning. And that way I don't have to have a whole bunch of different kits that have different kick drums in them. I can have one that's the same across, and then I can modify it as I play. So that's what I want to try to set up. So anyway, hopefully they fix that kit thing soon, because it's the one thing for me that I need that it does not have yet. So can also sequence A and B separately on different steps. Correct. Yes, you can. Did you end up selling your XY in your recent gear purge? Are you still enjoying it? It is still for sale. I haven't sold it yet. And the part of why I haven't sold it is because, yes, I do still enjoy it. So I'm not dropping the price just to sell it. So if somebody wants it, great. But it's not gonna be some sort of smoking deal. So because I do still like it. So I don't feel bad if I don't sell it. But yes, it is still for sale. But yes, to answer what you had mentioned before, yes, you can sequence different, you can sequence A and B separately. So let's take this kick. So you've got 2 sides. Maybe take one that's a little bit better. Yeah, so something like this where you have, so you've got shorter kick on one side, something that's more boomy on the other side. So then you can go in and you can, like if we're on this track, you can go to, get out of kits. Yeah, so if you go to, if you hold A and you hit the hit the sequencer, you can see how it's putting a blue trig down instead of a red one. Red is both, blue is A, and then B is green. So if I was to switch, so you can hear that there's two different sequence patterns playing there at the same time, right? Let's find something that's a little better. I didn't have those in this kit. Where did I have those? There we go. This kit had both. So okay, so with our low toms here, turn up the volume a little bit. So with the low toms, this is a lower tom on one track and a higher tom on the other track. So with this one, I can go through and I can say, I want to sequence A here, and I want to sequence B here. So now you're only hearing A because it's on that side, but if I start to morph between the two, and then if I get all the way over to B, you only hear the B sequence. Take some of those out. And then as you morph back, now this can be even more notable if you change up the voice. So let's do, yeah, so let's just make it a 707 snare. So now this side is just the snare that's sequencing. This side is just the low tom. But then if you morph those two together, and they share obviously volume fader and end tube and decay. Effect sends. So they share those things, right? But then you can decide, do you want just your snare, or do you want just your low tom, or do you want some version of the two together? If you were to do your B sequence on like every step, you could do like a, right? So it gives you a lot of options with how you use the A and B side. So you can use A and B to layer, or you can use A and B as a way to move back and forth between a couple different sounds. So it's kind of like the way things are set up on the Exelon mixer in my case. This can be either a stereo channel, or it can be two mono channels. And then you can use the pan to fade between the two mono channels. So you could have, like, for example, if you wanted to layer kick drums, you could have two mono kicks coming into something, and then you could mix between them with this. So it's a way to do that in the modular case. This one does it internally by device, so that, or by channel, so that you can have each channel have two different distinct things that you can morph between, or they can be layered on top of that. So again, this goes back to this, back to the sequencer side of this. So like if you were going to do something like the kick here, that's two different kick drums that are layered in this one, you're just going to use these red trigs. You're just going to lay down the ones that are, you want to sequence the two together because it's a layered sound that's designed to hit together. But with the other one, with this one, if you want to sequence it as two separate things, you have two separate sequencers, and you can do combinations. So you'll see like there's green, these are blue, green, this one's red. So this means both hit on this one. I could make both hit here, and here. And then as you play it, then you get this like, so that's just the tom side. And then we can take, you know, just the B ones out, and we can actually make those. And you can see you can do different velocities sequencing with those too. So kind of like old school 909 style. One hit is a regular one, and then you can do as kind of a softer hit as well. And this is something, again, because you've got the control between the two that's already assigned to one of the knobs here, that's something that you can assign to the morph. So if you wanted to have, you know, let's say you had a couple of them and you wanted them to go back and forth together, that could be a scene that you create for the morph is, I want it to go from this voice to this voice as I morph between them. So it'll be a way to kind of make things move in a different way when you're performing live. So another kind of cool one. Anyway, where are we at here? Have you played around with resampling? Is it live resampling? Yes, you can live resample, but it's not looping. So if that's what you're asking about. So it's not like what the Octatrack can do where you can kind of live loop, have it assigned to another thing and start playing. It doesn't do that. If you resample, you're just selecting a particular track as the input source for the sampler. Then once the sample is done, you then have to assign it to something, give it a name, whatever. So it's not really made to be something that you do like live on the fly, where you grab a sample and then loop it. That's, again, much more an Octatrack thing than a TR-1000 thing. So, yes. Where overseas are you moving to? Lisbon or Berlin? Actually, the plan is hopefully Spain. That's the idea. So, and we're looking at a few different areas, so we'll see. But yes, that's the plan. Although Lisbon's beautiful too. And, you know, we're looking at places that are easy enough to be able to get a visa to be able to work there, or at least do remote work from there. So Portugal and Spain are very high up on that list, but we prefer Spain. We spent a lot of time there anyway. Favorite place, but Portugal's beautiful as well. So who knows? Who knows? Who knows where we'll end up? Not here, which is a good thing. Cool. Any other questions? What other questions do you guys have? If you got something else, pop it into the chat. Happy to answer questions about the TR-1000. Happy to show you whatever I can show you that I know how to do. Or, you know, setup of the modular or any of that kind of stuff. Happy to go through any of that. Yeah, so you can go back to the view of the whole setup. So yeah, what I have set up here right now, just, you know, I'm sure you kind of saw from the view, but just to explain super fast, TR-1000 doing drums and percussion. Oxy One Mark II is sequencing the modular, which is where I have some drums, but I haven't been using them today because I've just been using the TR-1000. And then all of my melodic voices and effects and send effects and all of that stuff, signal processing. TR-1000 is coming into a track here so that it's going through this kind of master processing that's going out to my mixer, which is what you're hearing. Then I also have another little modular case up here, which is where I put modules that aren't in my case, particularly ones that I'm testing or thinking about putting in here. I have a module here that I'm testing that's going to be released on November 24th. So watch out for a stream around then so I can finally show you what it is, because it's pretty badass. And I don't have it in my case yet, but it will be, yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. You may have seen some stuff about it already, but I can't tell you, it's a secret. But yeah, so this is for things that are not, have not made their way into the case yet, or are being tested or experimented with. So that's what the smaller case is for here. And then also have the 1010 Blue Box, which I think you can see down here. This I use as a multi-track recorder. So when I'm jamming, I can record multi-track of everything that's in my modular channel. So yes, that is that. Let's see here. I wouldn't take the TR-1000 as a modern 808-909. There's no way to replicate the swag of those machines. However, I won't deny that this machine has a lot of potential, but that's another story. I mean, I guess for me, it is a modern 808 and 909 both, because it has the 808 and 909 circuitry, which has been modernized and upgraded, built into it. So those sounds are there. So, I mean, it is literally a modern 808 and 909 plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, as far as swag, that all just comes down to, do you want to have a vintage piece of gear or not? And that's, you know, there's vintage gear out there that sounds amazing. You know, every 909 sounds a little different because they've all aged a little differently. So I'm assuming that, you know, some of them sound awesome, some of them sound really good. I don't think any of them sound bad, but some of them sound awesome and some sound really good. But they, this can do all the things that those can do. And then it also has a whole bunch more stuff on top of that. So if swag comes from age and kind of worship status, then for sure, you know, these will always be a modern machine. They're going to make thousands of them rather than hundreds like they did with the old ones. So these are never going to be that you know, $8,000 vintage 909 that you can't get your hands on, because it's just a modern machine that they're making a lot of, and they're very popular. So they're going to make a lot of them. Where 808s and 909s, they were, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, they were the first of what they did, which makes them, you know, amazing. But this is literally a modern 808 and 909. So let's see, do you plan to bring it to your live rig? I want to. That's my whole thing. I'm figuring out a way that I can make that happen. So I just got to figure it out. I was actually wondering what kind of mastering you're using in your modular setup. I have one module that everything's going through, which is right here, which is the Polydactyl Versio from Noise Engineering, which is a multi-band processor. So it basically has a compressor and a limiter per band. I'm not using the compressors because I don't like using compressors in my live setup, but I use the limiter, and then it also has a built-in saturator. And so I use saturation and limiting from that. And then, yeah, then line out from my, from the board brain monitor, which basically just converts the signal into line level balanced output. And it's got some monitoring on it, which is great. So I can see what's going on. So yeah, that's it. Let's see, Houghton, Johnsonville, etc. All in Portugal. I know. It's become the, my friend David Castellani just moved there as well. So yeah, it's become the hotbed of a lot of really good techno music, which I think is very cool, but Spain's close. Let's see, would you see the drop and TR-1000 working well together? Maybe. I don't think so, to be honest. And the reason why is I think it's just, it would be a lot of overlap. I mean, like the big thing with the drop is being able to assign knobs and to have faders for everything that it's controlling, where this already has assignable knobs and faders. And so you wouldn't necessarily need that. Now, being able to have macros maybe is that, you know, because you can do macros in the the drop. So possibly, but it's not, this wouldn't be for me the best use of the drop. For me, the best use of the drop is devices like an Octatrack or like a Digitone 2 that are super, super deep and have lots of functions that are different across multiple tracks. And you can turn those into macros in the drop so that you can like turn one knob and have it be, 8 different filter cutoffs. And that's really super powerful. And you wouldn't find that same kind of value here, I don't think. I think where you would find the most valuable is in something that's like that, that's a multi-track, multi-timbral, really deep device that you want to avoid the menus of while you're playing live. So the drop was, so Thomas from Noisite, who designed the drop, he designed it, I mean, it works perfectly with his workflow for his live setup. And so you can see it's kind of designed, that's kind of like the ideal use for it. He uses an Octatrack, an analog rhythm, I believe, and a modular. And so he's got the modular being controlled through MIDI to CV conversion, and all of these deep functions in the Octatrack and in the analog rhythm all being controlled through the drop. So that's really what it's great for, is you can do macros across multiple devices and across multiple tracks and have it do a lot of different things with one turn of a knob. And I don't think you would, I think it would be kind of overkill because of the amount of overlap. I don't think it would be the best use to pair that with the TR-1000. It would be my take. Now, TR-1000 with an Octatrack with a drop, hugely powerful. TR-1000 with a Digitone 2 with a drop, hugely powerful. So yes, there are some great uses for this with the drop, but I wouldn't say it would be the drop controlling this. I would say let this do what it does and then use the drop to control whatever you're using next to it, whether it's the modular or a multi-timbral synth or whatever. So that would be my take. Sound-wise, compare with the Percons. Let's see. So the Percons for me, so when I don't have the Percons anymore, when I still had the Percons, what I was using it for was percussion. I didn't enjoy the kick as much as a lot of people do. And I think it was because I was so used to the kicks in the analog rhythm that are so much better that I was just like, yeah, whatever. But using it as a percussive device, multi-tracks of percussion with another drum machine that does kind of your normal drum sounds is great. But as far as comparing to this, I don't think there's really any comparison. The sound of this is just like next level. And the TR-1000 has 14 tracks basically, because each one of these is a dual track, where the Percons has 4. This has a full analog 909 and 808, all of those engines in here, plus all of the original 909 sample engines, all of the new ACB versions of the 808, 909, plus all of these ACB and sample versions of, 727, 707, 606, what else does it have? CR78, a whole bunch of different engines. So it doesn't really compare because the Percons has 4 engines, each has a few different algorithms that are switchable. So you've got a few different options across 4 tracks, and they're all digital. And so they're, certain things this doesn't do that the Percons does. Like Percons has some cool CarPlus engines, which this doesn't have. But so it's not kind of a 1-to-1, but if you tried to do a 1-to-1, you're comparing 4 tracks to 14 tracks, analog voices to all digital, 4 different voices with a few different algorithms each. I think there's a total of 13. This has literally thousands of sounds because it has all of the engines plus samples. So it's like, it's kind of like this kind of never-ending box. So I don't really think there's a comparison. And again, there's not a comparison with the Percons with a lot of drum machines, because what it does, it's really unique, very immediate and great for percussion. But for me, the Percons was never kind of a drum machine. It was always a percussive machine, and it was limited to 4 tracks, and that was part of it as well. Now, if you want to stick in the Erica Synths world, the Percons with the hex drum, I think is a great combination, because the hex drum is kind of your standard drum machine with all those basic bread and butter drum sounds, and they sound great and it's very playable. And then the Percons has these great creative percussive sounds and it's very playable. So that's kind of a cool combination. But then I would also say the cost of a hex drum and a Percons is more than the cost of a TR-1000. So it's, I don't know. There's no one size fits all, I guess is the answer. What else? Thanks, appreciate you taking the time to explain. Of course, that's what I'm here for. That's why I do these. Have a Percons and it's great, but it doesn't really fit the role of classic drum machine. Totally, I'm totally with you. It's really fun and it's as an additional thing. Yeah, a Percons is a great companion to a bread and butter drum machine, whatever that is, right? If it's a you know, a 909 or an RD9, or if it's you know, the hex drum, or if it's you know, the LXR, the other Erica Synths little drum machine. Like if it's one of those, great. And then the Percons, you get some really cool, creative, interesting percussive sounds out of it. So you get a lot of that add-on stuff. But yeah, as a bread and butter drum machine, the two that for me are fun, really cool, creative machines, but for me are not bread and butter drum machines, are the Percons and the what is it? The Soma Pulsar. That's what. Yeah, the Pulsar 23. Also, an amazing, fun, creative, interesting percussive machine, but it pairs really well with a drum machine. If you want to have like drum sounds with a Pulsar, amazing. Drum sounds with the Percons, amazing. I think they're both really, really, really good that way. So yes. Hey, Board Brain, is this Adam or who's online today? But hey, Board Brain Music, my mixer guys. Board Brain are the guys that make my Exelon mixer that I have in here, as well as the output device here, which is allowing me to multi-track into the Blue Box. So yeah, they do the mixer ecosystem of modular mixers. But yes. Let's see, who's the modular case maker from Italy? Morph Modular, that's who makes this one right here. It's called the Explorer, and they've got, this is a 14U84, and they also have a 14U104. Or you can buy individual boats without the handle, if you just want that. It also has like 1/4-inch outputs that you can wire to stuff like the IntelliGel or Bafaco. There's some other manufacturers that have modules that you can connect behind the scenes to the 1/4-inch outputs, so that you can do, you know, output or input. You can, you know, send out to pedals or bring in other synths or whatever, and you can have those wired into modules. So it's pretty cool to have it in the case. How's the MIDI sync on the TR-1000 as slave and master? So it's good now. It wasn't a week ago. They put out an update because they were having trouble. It worked really good as master clock, but as soon as you tried to have it follow anything else, it was slow to start. And so it would create this tiny little delay. And what they did was they added in a parameter so that you can adjust that delay. So for example, now mine is on +20 because that's what it takes to sync up with the Oxy as the master clock. So now when I press play on the Oxy, it's perfect in sync. But a week ago it wasn't. A week ago that was an issue, and that's why you heard about it across all the forums. That was the biggest complaint that people had about this thing was the MIDI sync. But that it's all fixed now, and it all along was working really well as the master clock. So if you clocked other things with it, either via MIDI or USB or CV clock out, they all worked really well. When it originally wasn't working well as a clock, I used it as the master, and I brought in a CV clock into the Oxy, and then had this clock my case, and it worked great. So they fixed it. It took a minute, and it was unfortunate that they didn't fix that before they released it, but it's fixed now. Where are we at? One boat plus my TR-1000. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at is there a way to, if I'm going to be using this for all my drums and I don't need the drums that I have in my case at that point, would I then go down to one boat, but then I need space for my mixer in that case, which means I take away some of my voices. And is that really what I want to do? And if I don't want to take away the voices, that moves the mixer into this case, which then I need two cases anyway. So it's like, right now, what feels like what's going to happen, at least until it becomes too big of a hassle, is this same modular case, the way I have it right now. What's going on? Yeah, so it looks like that's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is, for the moment, this modular case with the TR-1000. And if I end up that I'm not using the drums, or not all of them, maybe I don't keep everything in the case. Maybe there's some things there that can come out, and that's going to allow me to have maybe some more effects, or some other interesting stuff that I could put in the case that I didn't have space for before. But it is a big commitment to take on a big machine like this to add to my travel rig. I'm very, very happy that it just barely fits in a personal item size bag. It will be stretching things just a little, because I think the maximum there is 18.5 and this is 19 inches. So hopefully they'll be nice with me. But yeah, it seems like that's the direction we're going, is this modular case plus TR-1000 for now. And we'll see. And who knows? I mean, we'll, if any of you who know me or have followed these things over time, you'll know that the setup is constantly evolving and constantly changing, and machines come and go, and modules come and go. And there was a time when I was just using the 6U84 and some Electron boxes. And then I went to full modular with a couple of Electron boxes. Then I went to full modular by itself with no Electron boxes. Now it's back to modular with TR-1000. So it's constantly evolving. And who knows, you might turn the stream on 6 months from now and find it to be TR-1000 and 2 Electron boxes and a little tiny modular skiff to have a voice or two in. Like, who knows? Ultimately, it has to sound the way I would like it to sound, and it has to be fun to play. So if it meets those things, cool, then I'll do it. And so it allows me flexibility, at least, to change things around a bit. So anyway, any other questions anyone has? We've been going for a while now, but I'm still happy to answer any other questions that are out there. And then, yeah, before we call it a day. But yeah, please feel free. And if you think of something that you didn't ask during the stream, but it comes up afterwards and you want to put it out there, you can just pop it into the comments in the video, and I try to answer as many of those as I can. I can't always get to all of them, but I try to do my best to answer as many of those as I can. So if you have a question, please feel free to pop it in there. And yeah, oh, one last thing. If you're interested in taking either of my courses, the January courses are now open. I don't have any more before the end of the year, except the November one, which we're in the middle of right now. There's no courses in December other than the video only course. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go online, and both courses are available in a video only format. They don't include any of the calls or one-on-ones or anything like that. But if you want to jump on that, you can absolutely do that. And then if you are interested in doing the full course, the next one's going to be in January, and those are already up and available to be booked on my website. And there's a link in the description of the video if you want to check that out. I'd love to have you in there, and we'll talk about all this stuff and how to improvise live on it and do all of that stuff. There's quite a few people in the chat here who've been in the classes, which I really appreciate. But Yeah. And if you have other questions about the TR-1000, I mean, there's some cool videos out there. There was a really cool demo during ADE where Nadia Stravig and Kink did a dual kind of, each one of them had a TR-1000 on stage and they played together. It was pretty amazing to see them. I mean, they're both amazing musicians, but to see them both play this instrument together and how it worked. I know that FIAC are using this a ton now. I saw them play at ADE and it was a big part of their setup, and I saw they've been posting some videos about it as well. So that's another one that I would definitely check out. Who else did I see who was using this? I know Speedy J is using it now. I saw him use it during the store events, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it's definitely check out some of the other information that's out there if you're thinking about it, because it's obviously it's a big thing if you're going to get one. But I'm digging it so far. That's the overarching message from the from the stream, is that I'm definitely digging it to the point where, you know, someone like me who's all about portability is willing to take this gigantic piece of kit to play shows, because it's just worth it. It sounds phenomenal and it is super fun to play and really capable too. So it's yeah, I'm digging it. And for anybody who knows me, they know it's a big deal for me to say that of a Roland machine, because I've been very harsh over the years on Roland's workflow, because I think they have not done a good job at it. And you know, Electron was miles ahead of Roland as far as workflow went with all the modern Electron devices. And this hasn't caught up. I still think the modern Electron workflow is much easier, much more capable, and much more intuitive than this. But this is a huge step in the right direction for Roland, and I did not expect that, actually. I was kind of worried, but when I first heard all the stuff it could do, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a Frankenstein's machine that is difficult to deal with and whatever. And it's just not. They did a great job. They really did a great job. So anyway, yes, go back to those videos and do the refresher. Some features that I miss on the TR-8S. SH4D, SH1000, TB-1000. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what they do going forward. But these are this is a great start. I think it's they built a good machine, and it's a tank. Like, not only does it look like a tank, it is a tank. It is solid metal. Like, it is. It's not one of those machines that you're gonna have to worry about bumping around when you're taking it out places. It's a tank. It's very, very solid, which is cool. Also important for gig travel. So anyway, thank you guys all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Anytime you have questions, feel free to pop those in the chat or in the comment section of the video. Happy to answer those. Pass this around to your friends so we can get more people out there having fun with gear and doing all the fun stuff. And hopefully you got something out of this, whether it's reinforcement that you like it, or yep, it's not the thing for you, or whatever. Either way is good. I'm just here to tell you what I'm digging on and not digging on. So you can take that for whatever it's worth. And yeah, hope to see you in the next stream. And thank you guys very much for tuning in. And hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks very much.